Good morning, and thank you for coming. I'm Christopher Hart, and it's my pleasure and privilege to serve as acting chairman of the National Transportation Safety Board. Today, I'm accompanied by my colleagues, Member Robert Sumwalt and Member Earl Wayner, to announce our 2015 Most Wanted list. I would also like to acknowledge presence in the audience of Bella Denzar, who has been nominated to be a member of the NTSB, and we look forward to quick action by the Senate on her nomination. Welcome. First, I'd like to thank Bob Skinner and the Transportation Research Board for hosting us yet a second year to announce our Most Wanted list. And I wish Rob well in his upcoming retirement. After more than 30 years at TRB and more than 20 as executive director, he certainly has earned it. Neil Peterson will bring deep and broad expertise to the TRB's research mission when he becomes executive director in February, and nonetheless, we will still very much miss Bob. TRB's theme this year is very fitting: corridors to the future, transportation and technology. The good news regarding the items on the Most Wanted list, and I'm sure you all have received your copies of it. If not, please feel free to take them. These are your tax dollars well spent. The good news is that over the last decades, thanks to the efforts of many dedicated people across the transportation modes, we have made great strides in improving transportation safety. Because of these efforts, the trends are in the right direction. The bad news, however, is that there are still tens of thousands of deaths and hundreds of thousands of injuries every year, which tells us that we still have a long way to go. Once again this year, too many of us returned from the holidays to a workplace missing a colleague, or our children may have returned to a classroom with an empty desk because someone had driven impaired, or because a text message or a phone call or some other distraction had taken a driver's mind off the road. At the NTSB, we want to make new strides in transportation safety in 2015, and we want to lay the groundwork for years ahead that are even safer. As we know, safety is not a destination, but a never-ending journey, and no matter how safe transportation becomes, there will always be room for improvement. Our Most Wanted list constitutes the steps that we want to see taken today as corridors to a safer future. That includes not only technology, but action by legislators, by operators, and by regulators working together, and it includes everyday people like you and me putting safety first. So without further ado, to show how we at the NTSB believe that all of us working together can continue improving transportation safety, here's a short video about the NTSB's 2015 Most Wanted list of safety improvements. The video, please. So let's hear a round of applause for the person wearing the glove. As you saw, the most wanted list covers all modes of transportation. You'll notice that many of these improvements are similar to items on our 2014 list. Distraction and impairment in transportation are both on the list again this year. On our highways, for example, according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, about 1 in 10 drivers in fatal crashes in 2012 were distracted. In almost a third of fatal crashes, a driver was impaired by alcohol, and we are only beginning to understand the contribution of impairment by other drugs. It's critical that we continue focus on these issues. Let's look at other areas. In other areas, we have sharpened our focus. For example, last year we took a broad look at helicopter safety. This year we are specifically urging enhancement to public helicopter safety. And by public, we mean those that are operated by governmental entities. Pilots of those helicopters who help the public through emergency medical services, law enforcement support, and search and rescue, among other missions, and members of the public who are aided by those efforts deserve the safest operations possible. Most airplane crashes happen in general aviation, so last year we prioritized identification and communication of hazardous weather in general aviation. This year we're prioritizing prevention of loss of control crashes in general aviation. Another subject, last year we worked on advancing passenger vessel safety and promoting operational safety in rail mass transit. On that subject, let me take a moment to extend our condolences to the friends and family of the passenger lost in the electrical arcing event in the Washington Metro that filled the tunnel with smoke yesterday. And I'd also like to offer our wishes for a full and speedy recovery to those who were injured. Our investigators completed their on-scene work at L'Enfant Plaza last night and will be documenting further evidence at the rail yard today. While unique, this event underscores the importance of the need to improve mass transit safety as reflected in this year's list. We also added a date to one of our transportation priorities. We don't usually do that, but we did it for a reason this year: implement positive train control in 2015. Positive train control can automatically apply a train's brakes when it's going too fast. 4 people died and scores were injured in the December 2013 Metro North derailment in the Bronx. A train entered a 30-mile-an-hour curve going 82 miles an hour. Positive train control would have prevented this derailment. It can also prevent other accidents. Regrettably, we have seen all those types of preventable accidents many, many times in the 45 years since we first recommended the forerunner to positive train control, 1969. In 2008, lawmakers from both parties overwhelmingly passed the Rail Safety Improvement Act of 2008, which gave railroads until December 31st, 2015, more than 7 years, to implement positive train control. That's why we put a date in the most wanted list, because Congress put a date, 2015. We want the railroads to meet this deadline, and we are now specifically saying so in our most wanted list because our accident investigations have revealed over and over again that positive train control will save lives. The time to act is now. There are 4 new areas that we are highlighting. Because of the significant increase in the carriage of crude oil and ethanol by rail in recent years, we have added improved rail tank car safety. Because public safety should not be jeopardized by a transportation operator who is not medically ready to fulfill his or her safety-critical role, and because we have seen too many accidents involving operators who were not medically fit, we have added require medical fitness for duty, and that applies to all the modes. Because we all share the road with commercial trucks that can cause enormous damage in the event of a crash, we've added strengthened commercial trucking safety. And because pilots must follow procedures every day, every flight, in order to ensure the safety of the traveling public, we have added strengthened procedural compliance. The most wanted list is our roadmap for 2015. We hope that it will also be a roadmap for policymakers as well as legislators. It's grounded in the accident investigations by which the NTSB learned safety lessons and in the recommendations that are the NTSB's primary safety product. These are safety improvements for which the time is ripe for action. Throughout the year, each of these issue areas will have 1 board member as its primary advocate. So as I field your questions, I will refer them to the appropriate board member who is taking the lead on that particular issue. But make no mistake, we are committed as one board to every one of these 10 issues. Thank you again for your time and attention, and thank you for helping us to get the word out. We would be pleased to take any questions that you may have. Any questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Are these in any particular top 10 order, or is this generally the top 10? Is there one that's most pressing?
The question for those of you who may not have heard it is, are these in any particular order? And the answer is no, they are not in any particular order. Yes, please.
I had two questions. One is, for taxpayers who don't follow NTSB on a regular basis, can you just clarify that your agency, as I understand it, can only recommend certain regulations and changes? You don't have the power to actually implement them. And second, in your fact sheet on impaired driving and substance impairment in transportation, you say at the bottom, nobody really knows the effect decriminalizing marijuana will have on transportation safety. But with 2 states now having legalized marijuana use for adults, they're adding to the universe of substances that can cause you to be impaired while driving. Doesn't it make sense that that would raise the risk?
For those of you who did not hear the question, the first one is describe briefly the role of the NTSB, and I'd be happy to do that. As the question suggests, we are the investigators. We investigate accidents, and then we make recommendations to try to prevent recurrences of those accidents, but I emphasize the word recommendations. We are not a regulator. We have no authority to require anyone to do anything, but having said that, even though we can't require it more than 80% of the time, contrary to what you would believe from the popular notions that people say this is a mere recommendation, trash it, contrary to those popular notions, people actually do what we recommend or some facsimile thereof more than 80% of the time. So that is correct. We are a recommending agency, not a requiring agency. To your second question about impairment, the question was, do we have any more information about impairment by drugs, especially now that 2 states, including my own home state of Colorado, have legalized it? Do we have any more information on that? And I will defer on that question to Member Sumwalt.
Thank you. We are concerned about any impairment, whether it's from marijuana, from alcohol, from over-the-counter drugs, and that's what we're concerned about. And any level of alcohol usage is impairing, not just 0.08 or above. There's nothing magic about that figure. Any number is impairing, and so we've asked states to lower the legal impairment, the legal limit for driving while impaired to 0.05. Regarding whether or not states who've increased, who've legalized marijuana, that is something that remains to be seen, but we're keeping our eyes on that. Thank you.
One of the recommendations we've made with respect to drugs is that we need to collect more information because, frankly, we don't have enough data to drive the policy decisions that will need to be made. We need more information regarding drugs. Any further questions? Yes, please.
Obviously, like you mentioned, this comes on the heels of yesterday's Metro incident. Can you say anything more about what you know so far and what investigators will be doing with that?
I don't know any further facts beyond what you've heard from our investigator in charge, Mike Flanagan, but you will get the Public Affairs Office will be putting updates on the website as soon as we find out, as soon as we get further information. Thank you for the question. Yes, please.
Yes. So you're sticking to the 2015 deadline for positive train control. On the tank car issue, what is the appropriate hard deadline for retrofitting or retiring the legacy fleet of tank cars? And what do you say to industry groups who say, we can't do it, we need more time?
The question for those of you who did not hear it is about rail tank car safety. We view that issue as a holistic issue that requires a broad approach, a broad response. First of all, the best solution is to keep the car on the rail in the first place, to keep it from derailing. The improvement of the integrity of the car is in case it does derail, so that's number 2. Number 3 is if it derails and the integrity is breached, then we have put an emphasis on emergency response. So it's a holistic response, and none of those has a time frame as such. They're all continuing activities that will have to continue forever. The reason for this, as I mentioned in my remarks, the reason that this is on there is because back years ago we used to see a full mile-long train with maybe 5 or 7 or 10 cars of crude oil or ethanol, and now in particular because of the discovery of the crude in North Dakota, the Bakken crude, now we see entire mile-long unit trains full of nothing but crude. So if that train derails, and that's the first hope, is to keep it from derailing. If that train derails, then there's a likelihood that at least one of those mile-long cars is going to breach. And if that happens, then there's a good likelihood that that breach is going to expand to other cars just because of the heat generated, et cetera. So it's a much bigger issue than it was back in the days when we might see 5 or 7 or 10 cars in the entire consist. Yes, please.
Distracted driving is an issue you have, distractions. Are you focusing primarily just on PEDs, or is that a broader area of distraction in general?
Thank you. That's Member Sumwalt's issue. I'll defer to Member Sumwalt.
Are we focusing on just PEDs, or is it a broader issue of electronic devices in general? And it's any distraction. It's we've called for, we would like to see laws that are prohibiting cell phone usage or any wireless device, not just handheld, but hands-free as well. We know that there's a cognitive distraction. We want visible enforcement of these laws. And furthermore, we feel that there needs to be greater education, greater awareness. Again, I think the cognitive distraction is greatly underestimated, and we need people to understand that if you're on a telephone or if you're texting, obviously texting, you're not paying attention to the road, but with cell phones, if we're talking, we're engaged in the conversation, we want people to understand that it's not enough to just keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road. We want your mind to be on the road as well.
So we have distraction on the list not because it's an abstract issue, because we know that drivers have been distracted ever since people have been driving. I can remember many times, wow, look at that 55 Thunderbird. I mean, that's a distraction. The point is, we go where the accidents take us, and the accidents are taking us in the direction of personal electronic devices. We're seeing, actually, we have accidents in fatal accidents in every mode of transportation due to use of electronic devices at an inappropriate time. Yes, please.
Regarding commercial trucks, is there any part of the status quo that the board finds particularly egregious and upsetting? And are there any solutions or technologies that you find particularly promising?
The question is about commercial trucking safety and its appearance on our list. Again, that's a holistic issue that we're looking at, broad spectrum of all the issues, starting with oversight by the regulator, looking at how the vehicles are maintained, looking at the driver fitness for duty, fatigue, medical fitness, those issues. We're looking at technologies to reduce the likelihood of crashes in case the driver is, for whatever reason, isn't stopping a crash. We're looking at the totality of the circumstances. Yes, please.
Can you please address, Mr. Chairman, the incident at Ron Hall yesterday, concerns about getting everyone evacuated?
I would like to focus this press conference on the most wanted list. We will certainly make information available about that accident as it becomes available. Yes, please.
Talking about distracted driving, one of the issues just a week ago at CES in Las Vegas, you see more and more of the auto manufacturers introducing new devices in the vehicles. Is that something that you're also concerned about? Have you seen in your accident investigations that that's also presenting a problem in addition to the PEDs?
I'll defer on that issue again to Member Sumwalt.
The question is, are we concerned, is the NTSB concerned about the proliferation of these automobile manufactured devices that are now being installed in cars? And the answer is yes, we are. And we are concerned about any level of distraction that can take away the focus from the road. We're concerned about that. But I also want to emphasize that we're not just concerned about distracted driving of automobiles. Yes, that is an issue that we're concerned about. We see a lot of accidents involving that. But we're also interested in distraction in all modes. We've seen distraction in rail accidents. We've seen marine accidents that involve people talking on a cell phone or using a computer. We've seen it in all modes. So we are very concerned about it, and we need to get a grip on this. I've said before that distraction in transportation, it's the new DUI. It's an epidemic, and we've got to get our handle on it.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Compared last year, so last year there was one is for the general infrastructure age issue like collision kernel. Although for this kind of accident, the fatality is less than, for example, jump driver
The question, as I understand it, goes to how things are on the list and how things are off the list and what happens when things go off the list. When things go off the list, it does not mean we are not paying attention to them. We are still paying attention to them. When things are on the list, it's more of an art than a science in terms of how to put things on the list. We look at a number of factors. So is this an issue where the numbers are either not going in the right direction or are actually actively going in the wrong direction? Is it an issue that we can make a difference on? We have to reevaluate that every year. Sometimes we can make a difference. Sometimes we're not as successful in making a difference. So we're trying to do the things where we can actually move the needle. One more question, and then we'll complete this conference. Yes, please.
You mentioned positive train controls and setting the deadline for this year, and also oil trains. How big an impact would positive train controls have on safety for oil trains, and should that be a higher priority than, say, new tank cars, or Department of Transportation is also considering different speed limits? Can you weigh in on what should be the priority, one versus the other?
The question is there a priority as between positive train control and improving the safety of rail tank cars? Positive train control is part of the holistic big picture regarding the safety of movement of large quantities of crude. So they're both important. We're not prioritizing one over the other. They are both crucially important. Thank you again for the opportunity to present this to you, and thank you for helping us to get the word out. Appreciate it.